is from John chapter 10, verses 1 to 11, the Good Shepherd and his sheep. Very truly, I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what he was telling them. Therefore Jesus said again, "Very truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Thank you, Neve. I was really pleased when I saw that this was the set reading for today. Excuse me. Because it contains my favourite verse in the whole of the New Testament, John 10:10. For a long time, I only knew the second half of that verse. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I love that, the fact that we have a full life when we come to Jesus. And I hadn't realised that the first part was there as well. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. And I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I also like John's Gospel tremendously. The more I have learnt about it, the more I've enjoyed it. When I first read John's Gospel, I found it quite complicated and quite difficult, and I couldn't understand why one of my vicars gave a new Christian John's Gospel to read. And this young lad went away and he read it, came back 2 days later and says, "I've read that, what do I do now?" And I thought, wow. But since then, I've realised that when John wrote his Gospel, and John, who wrote this Gospel, was the disciple who was the closest to Jesus. He was the one who, it says, Jesus loved. He was the one who, when Jesus was on the cross, gave him to his mother to look after. He said, "Mother, this is your son. John, this is your mother." He asked them to look after each other. And John lived to a right old age, and he would have thought a lot about what Jesus said and what Jesus did. And the way he wrote his Gospel wasn't always in chronological order. And I didn't realise that for a long time. It was actually David Abbott who pointed that out. That the story of Jesus turning over the money changers' tables and clearing the temple, which in all the other Gospels comes just at the beginning of the Passion Week, just before he died. In John's Gospel, it's chapter 2. It's the second thing that's recorded about what Jesus did. And the other thing that I discovered was that there are 7 different sayings of Jesus, all of which begin with "I am." We heard 2 of them in that reading. One of them was in one of the hymns that we sang at the beginning. Anybody remember which any of them were? I am the... Sorry? I am the good shepherd. I can't hear you. Pardon? Oh, the gate, yes. And that was in the reading as well. I am the gate. There were 7 altogether. Now, whether 7 was because that was considered to be a mystical number, 7 days of the week, 7 moving planets in the sky, including the sun and the moon. But there were 7 of them. And the way that John wrote them down was in a special literary device, which was called a chiastic structure. And I think we've got that. Can you see the picture there? What would happen was that the very first one would be a comment about one of the things that the writer wanted to speak about. And you have the first one here, and then the second one would build up, and then the third one. And right at the top of the description of the passage, the fourth one would be the most important one. But then you'd have a few more coming down just to sort of make sure that you knew what it was all about. So you'd have 3 more. And quite often, they would be balanced with each other, which I found made it very much easier to remember. The first one in John's Gospel is, I am the bread of life. The last one is, I am the vine, bread and wine, what Jesus gave us to remember him. The second one is, I am the light of the world. The second to last one is, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And you need a light to show you the way. The third one is the gate. And the one to balance that is the resurrection. And the gate for the sheep was something which protected them. They would go in at night times and be protected from all the wild animals and thieves and robbers who would come and steal them. And Jesus actually took that and said, I am the gate. I am the one where they can come in and go out. I love that. They can come and go and be safe, and I'll find pasture for them when it's time for them to go out. And when they come in, they will come in and be safe. And to have the resurrection as opposite that, there is somewhere where you're going to go to be safe. And because of Jesus' resurrection, that's where we can be. And right at the top is the Good Shepherd. And because that was in that position, the way that John wrote his gospel, that means that that one, that aspect of Jesus, is what John considered to be the most important aspect of all. And that made me think, if he was a good shepherd, who were the bad shepherds? And I remembered that there was a chapter in the Old Testament, one of the prophets had written about the bad shepherds. It was Ezekiel. I had to look it up because I couldn't remember where it was. Ezekiel, who lived about 500-600 years before Jesus, had written about the bad shepherds that there were for the people of Israel. Woe to you, shepherds of Israel, who only take care of yourselves. Shouldn't shepherds take care of flocks? They don't strengthen the weak. They don't heal the sick. They don't bind up the injured. You don't bring back strays or search for the lost. You rule them harshly and brutally. And that was the description in Ezekiel of what the bad shepherds were doing. And God said, I will rescue them. I will look after them. I will make them lie down in good pasture. What does that remind you of? Remember David's 23rd Psalm? Now, David had lived 500 years before Ezekiel, and Ezekiel was referring to him and saying, this is what David did. This is what God is saying the good shepherd should be doing. And he went on to prophesy that God said, I will place over them one shepherd, my servant David. A prophecy that one day someone would come in the line of David and would do for the sheep what the good shepherd should do. and wasn't so much of Jesus' ministry, telling the Pharisees, telling the Sadducees and the teachers of the law that yet again they'd got it wrong. They were behaving like the bad shepherds in Ezekiel's time. Mind you, in Ezekiel it also mentions that the flock are not to be escape judgment. The strong ones were elbowing out the weak ones, were not considering others. And isn't that still going on in some places? The leadership that is meant to be caring for those who are following are just looking out for themselves. And this was something that Jesus then commissioned Peter with. When Jesus reinstated Peter after he denied him, and he'd met him and forgave him by saying, "Do you love me?" 3 times. Do you remember? Remember what he said to him? "Feed my lambs. Take care of my sheep. Feed my sheep." I've always believed that that is the basis for what we should be doing here at Sunnyside. And I'm delighted to say that so many places we see that happening. For so long we have focused on our young people and our children. We have fed the lambs. One of the things which is really exciting so many of us these days is what happens at Messy Babies here in the weekdays. On a Monday and a Wednesday morning, how many do we get? Dozens turn up with their babies. And we welcome them here. And we feed them literally with biscuits and cakes, but also with songs and stories of Jesus. Take care of my sheep. We get it wrong lots of times, but so often we do everything we can to care for one another when there is something wrong. I'm sure most of you have been on the receiving end of that, one way or another. And feeding my sheep, yes, sharing food with one another, but also the courses that we put on, the training that we put on, and the sermons that are preached, Sunday by Sunday, the house groups that meet together to discuss them. But we can only do that when we acknowledge that we need the help of the shepherd, the good shepherd, who provides and protects for his flock and cares for each one of us. But we each have a part to play, and he'll show us what our part is. Amen. We're going to sing now